looking this thing over.
We have to be careful that we make it generic enough so that all those places that need it can use it.
Yes.
I like the idea to build it from the ground up. I think that's the only way you can go. And it's start with the technicians, and then that's worked for us really well. Start there and get them excited about the process and doing that with emergency communications, and then build on there. One of the things that we've noticed that we've had people walk in with Baofangs, and then, you know, you get them excited about it. Next thing, they upgrade, and they after a year, they're chomping at the bits. They're saying, well, I can do all this stuff now on VHF and UHF. I want to do it on HF. And before long, you know, they're up there running and doing contests and whatnot. So it's good for the hobby too.
It gets, I'm looking at getting people's feet wet with a purpose. I see lots of potential if we can pull this off. Where are you? There you are. Lee. You
yes,
always
sir.
have a, you don't serve me. That's my dad's name.
What I see is a huge commitment that's well worth it. But I don't see this as a piecemeal patchwork kind of thing. The people that we deal with, that we are training to either serve or work with, have standardized training. They have standardized way of operating. And I think unless we address ARES, and I think the first thing, I know I'm jumping right in here, but you gave me time to think, so this is what you got.
Okay.
I think the first thing we need to do is bust the myth that what works in my county doesn't work in your county or division or section. Because I think that if it doesn't, then then we've got a problem, because my experience has been, okay, I'm a member of my own club. I'm also in 4 other clubs, basically because we have very active emergency management agencies. We have a nuclear power plant here in the county, just very active in this area. And we have radio rooms in these 4 locations. So each is 30 miles away from me. And I'm able to operate in any one of those. I'm able to go across a county and have the same skill set that the other county has, the people I'm working with. And I think that's really valuable. And I think that builds on our strengths being our networking, the way we network, and the way we work together. And I think that's where we have to really address anything that we want to do with training. We need to build on our strengths and learn how to treat each other well, learn how to work together. And that's really where we shine and where we will shine. What we do, for example, the Red Cross exercise. You know, the Red Cross has a saying. I volunteered for the Red Cross for quite a while. And I did disaster services technology, and I did 3 HOTS. I don't know if anybody of you are in American Red Cross, but hands-on trainings. I did 3 of them. And I was on the ECRV team out of Chicago. But the Red Cross has a mantra. They say, we do it one way, we do it the Red Cross way. And there's a reason for that. And that's because you get volunteers from everywhere, from all walks of life. And if you're speaking the same language and having the same, and you have the same training, and you understand the same forms, you can work together in any situation. So jumping right in there, sorry guys.
No, that's what I want. That's what I think we all want.
Yeah.
Have you had time to think about this at all, Sid?
Yes, I think it's very exciting. And good evening, everybody. Some of you I've met through I'll call it my day job as the chairman of the Public Relations Committee for the ARRL. But I don't have that hat on. I left that in the other room. But my career for the last 35 years has been public safety, and for the last 25 years being in emergency management for the federal government at many different stops. And the idea of consistency, as Lee just mentioned, is very, very important. I truly feel that amateur radio is going to be successful in the future based on what's between these two antennae and not necessarily the aluminum that's in somebody's yard or the rubber ducky on their HT. It's especially talk about who we serve, whether it's your neighbor, the citizens, other agencies, and whether it's just for fun or whether it's for some kind of service. Right now, there just isn't any consistency on training. And when I talk to Dan, both in email and talking to him on the phone, I'm really excited because I like to see people experiment. I like to see them try. I coach sports, and it's one of the toughest things in the world. I coach girls lacrosse at the high school and club level, and trying to get confidence in throwing the ball, catching the ball, and then, oh no, the ball is in my stick. What do I do now? And the idea of just finding that common ground and getting some people together, finding the right people who, because everybody learns differently, and finding that group and giving it a shot. That's what I see. And I've heard it for the last few weeks with my public relations conference calls that I've had. Nobody's willing to try because there are so many people that are vocal and so negative. But, oh yeah, well, and I used to hear this all the time. Well, we tried that back in 1967 and that didn't work. So I'm here to help out, not from a public relations standpoint, but from any other way that I can help this group, because you can't start the journey until you take the first step.
Okay, that sounds good. Tom. Uh-oh, he's a teacher, folks, so we're gonna get the scoop now.
No, I'm not a teacher anymore. I gave that up back in 1971. Actually, I made a couple notes. I appreciate the standardization, and I like that. However, we have to look at that other side. We have to be still flexible because there's differences across. And if you deal with ARES especially, there's differences geographically throughout this nation. The problems we have here in the East Coast, especially the sections I represent with water around three sides of us, oceans and bay and then river, the situation are different than the Midwest. And so there's got to be standardization, but there also has to be ability for flexibilization as well. Geographic, and also somebody mentioned it, learning differences. Everybody learns differently, so we have to be able to be flexible with learning differences. Now, you're suggesting on the bottom, use Zoom. I just finished 30 minutes ago, or less than 30 minutes ago, a Zoom cloud course, EC 016 for ARES leaders in our section that was scheduled as a classroom course because they didn't particularly appreciate online learning. So we came up with an alternative way to do the same thing, and the league supported us. And then coronavirus hit us and the building we were going to use got shut down. So we flipped it over and did a Zoom meeting, and it worked extremely well. We ran it as a discussion group. So we had the flexibility of changing things around, but we also had an assistant instructor personnel in there that added the real world. They talked about Sandy. They talked about other incidences they were involved with, and we have various things going on. So I just wanted to say that so far. I'll turn it back to the group, but I think we have to look at all that, but we have to have structure. We have to have flexibility, but we have to have like a model of how you design, and that should be structured. And is anybody going to bring out the IRRL is doing some of the same basic stuff right now? I don't know if you're going to bring that up, but I'm helping out with one course. Back to Dan.
I think he's on the phone, but yes. How many people here have task books that they use through ARES? they have the ARES members have to get their tasks signed off in their task book.
Iowa has one.
A lot of the places do. I think that's a good starting point, that we list all of the training in the task books and have it standardized, like the ARES is trying to have a nationwide task book, and then the individual areas can build on the basic level of the task book, and we can include the training and all of that. I think that's the way we should start out anyway. Dan, are you available yet, or are we still on our own?
Mute off. I'm back again. Telephone's driving nuts. I just got my telephone muted now, hopefully. Sorry, guys. Okay. Before we get into materials and stuff like that, let's still stick to the structure of this thing. Fred, I don't know, Barry, did you have a chance to talk about your feelings on the structure?
Yeah, we talked about using the task book as the basis for the structure. So it will be standardized throughout all the areas. And then the individual areas are free to add on to the basic task book in the training list that's in the task book.
Okay, something to follow along with after, before, during, and after. That makes total sense.
Yep.
Okay, Paul, you just jumped in here. Did you get a copy? I'm assuming you got a copy of my vision here. You want to comment on it?
I'm not sure I did, Dan.
Hang on.
If you could send that over.
I will do that. And
I can go ahead and comment while you're sending it to him.
okay, go for it.
Yeah, I did receive it earlier. I just wasn't sure what you were talking about when you mentioned it, so I had read about it and thought about it. I do agree that in common elements across various ARES support organizations, there needs to be standardization. And I kind of see this as, kind of like a Lego set. We as hams have a lot of different little Lego pieces that you can use for different things. And while there's a lot of commonality that absolutely must be there, ICS and all that kind of stuff, there's certain things that need to be emphasized more and less in various agencies. Tom mentioned water. I'm totally surrounded by water, but as you heard in my presentation about how we supported our EMA during the hurricanes, our role here is far different than other places across the country. And I'm sure every local area has its nuances and areas of focus. Maybe you're in a forested area where you need more search and rescue, whereas search and rescue for us would be more interfacing with the Coast Guard, for example. So one of the things I like, and I'll just touch a brief bit on format, I really liked the short format that the San Diego Club used for the various WinLink elements. If you think you're going to get folks to sit down and watch an hour a presentation, you're going to lose half of them quickly. And if you break it down into small enough pieces that don't chew up too much of people's time at one chunk, it also allows you to have more pieces of the puzzle or Lego pieces to focus on those things that are important to you and your EMA.
Yeah, that sounds good. Paul, are you ready there yet? You get your email? Hello, Paul, W1PJS. You must be still reading. Okay. Well, Scott, you go ahead. We're waiting for Paul.
I don't really have a whole lot to say. Well, I'm listening to everybody, and everybody's had good suggestions so far. I have to agree that, ARES is not the same here as it is there. It means something different here than it does there. We have a different role with our EMA here than a lot of folks do, and that changes the whole aspect and makeup of how it works and the internal workings of it. So I know that the league has a task book that they have set down and written, but it works in general, and that's fine. But I also know that in practicability here in my section, That's a hard pill to swallow. It's just getting them. First, I've got to get them to the at least the 4 basic NIMS courses. That's the first step we have to take, and that's a huge step for us at this point. Yes, we have well over 400 who have the 4 basic, but you know what? They took it and didn't really learn anything. They haven't put that into practicality yet. They haven't needed to. Now, will that come? Yeah, it will. As time goes on, they will be put into situations where they will learn why they had to learn all this. So, but it takes time.
Okay.
And there was an opening statement that was made. You know, I was laughing in the background because, quite frankly, I hear it all the time. And that statement was that, you know, we tried that back in 1967. It didn't work. Yeah, I hear that all the time. We tried that 50 years ago. It didn't work. Ain't going to work today. Well, you don't know that. You know, there's 50 years difference. I always get a kick out of, I'm a fan of watching old TV shows. Tonight we sat down at supper time and we watched Adam 12, just as an example. And, you know, at the time they were cutting technology in that show. They had it down pat, but we watched them basically disarm a bomb. Now, knowing how they disarm things today and looking at that, it was like, holy smokes, there's a world of difference in what they do. So, you know, 50 years changes a lot of things. 10 years changes a lot of things. 10 years ago, we would have never dreamt to need NIMS courses. I mean, let's all be, you know, truthful. Even after 9/11, we all still thought in our realm of the world, we wouldn't need it, but we do. And we know that now. That's what 10 years of advancements have forwarded to us. So, you know, it's like, it just depends on where you want to go with things. So, and like I said, Dan, even in Idaho, your ARES group works different than my ARES group or Lee's ARES group.
Are you sure, Scott? Let me challenge you a little on that and let's see what happens.
Okay.
Okay, so I do work a lot of events outside of my own area, and I do it on purpose. I've worked the Chicago Marathon. I contacted a group in New York to work the New York Marathon, but I didn't make it that year, so that was a bummer. I work in Des Moines, which is 2 hours away from me, and like I said, I work several different EOCs, and they're all different. But when I show up, I have my vest on. I have my NIMS training. I know how to start a net and end a net. I know how to fill out a 309. I know how to pass traffic. And those skills give me the confidence that it takes for me to walk into a situation that I may not be familiar with people. I may not be familiar with the location, but I've got the confidence that I'm speaking the same language and have the same skill set as the other people around me. And that brings up the other side of the coin. That means that a new ham can walk into that situation and be assured that the people that they're working with have the right skills to be working with them. And that is the way you get inclusive. That's the way you get new hams involved, is by building that confidence, not having everything all up in the air and different set of rules every time you go and that kind of thing. And believe me, if I showed up in one of your ARES events, you probably wouldn't know that I wasn't part of your group certainly by my dress or my skill set, but maybe by, you know, that I don't know your emergency manager or something like that. But that should happen. That is the way that if there's a tornado or a flood, you know, Cedar Rapids, I live in Cedar Rapids, was major flood, wiped out the whole of our downtown. Our sheriffs, our police officers, our jail was on an island. And 2 counties away, where I work, it's not like that. So we do have different situations, but my skill set, my basic skill set is the same wherever I go. And I would challenge you to give me something that your ARES group does that my ARES group doesn't.
Oh, I don't know. I have no
Yeah.
idea.
Yes.
What I'm getting at more is not so much that as it is the training levels and the mentality to get those training levels.
It's a people
that's
level.
all over the board.
Yeah, Dan,
Yeah.
you're absolutely right.
Yeah,
That's
a people
where it's
side.
at.
I see Paul's got a video on. Are you ready to address this, Paul?
I can. I did come in a little late, so I don't know what was said.
It was all bad stuff about the American Red Cross. Ooh, how bad. Go on.
Well, listen, I having volunteered for them for a long time and deployed quite a bit with them, and notably in the role of liaison, for example, with those Force of 2, as you circulated a link the other day, as well as it was very interesting to get a perspective on, different from the one that I had as a FEMA person there working with those same guys, or as later as a Red Cross guy working with those same guys, and why we sent them home. But here I have to agree with Lee. Let me put it this way: there are certain basic skill sets, I think, that are applicable across the board. Front with saying motivating people to get that training and skill sets is a whole nother matter. But how to set up an antenna in the field. Okay, how to run a net or be a net participant with good form. How to work WinLink properly with the forms, for example, that were done on this exercise, or what I'll call an activity just this past weekend. Okay, so there's a whole slew of commonality in skill sets, capabilities, capacities, all that kind of thing that are across the board, no matter where you are. We had on a call with you, Dan, we had Tom Brown and company from North Carolina, who basically run the OxCom operation style, right? Working as called up by the EOC. There are different ways that this is implemented all over the place. Here, we're sort of hybrid of that. Okay, where we're kind of called up by them, but we also serve with the Red Cross. We also serve municipal EMAs, which may or may not have credentialing requirements. These things vary across also. Okay, but I do think that a certain commonality of training and whether I know it came up also previously, whether whether ARES or the ARRL was going to be, I think it was with the Tom Brown, the North Carolina guys, whether, ARES or ARRL would be in a position to credential people properly. I don't know, right? You're going to want to have the background check from the served agency, whether that's the state or local, county, whatever EMAs. Okay, they'll want that kind of thing. So, and that also relieves a certain burden on the ARRL. So some of that kind of stuff is going to be different in each location. And again, the motivating of people to get this stuff done will have to be handled, as appropriate. But I do think a common skill set is almost mandatory in the way Lee was saying. And I think that here, and actually throughout the New England division now, I'm in Rhode Island, by the way, for those of you guys who don't know. So really, some of you guys have ARES organizations as large as all the total number of hams in Rhode Okay, so I can't compete on certain levels that way. But what we're doing here, and it's unfortunate that with this virus, you know, COVID, the New England Division Convention got first delayed and now maybe canceled. But we were going to have this year for the first time an ARES Academy. And that was going to be, you know, an in-person thing on one of the days of the convention, where we would have a course on WinLink, a course on APRS and GIS, essentially, and how to use maps, you know, and location tracking and things like that, or a course on being a net control station, or a course on, as well as the, you know, EC 001 or EC 016 courses that ARRL offers. So in-person versions of that. And we were going to have a panel discussion on, you know, how to work with a served agency and have representatives from the Red Cross, from FEMA, from various of the state EOCs there, you know, and say, here's what you can do for us. And here's what we would like to see an ARES type group, whether you do it like OxCom, because some of the states here would prefer that. And some of the states here, you know, have varying, whatever, they have varying needs. So we were going to try to implement something like that. And we all came together and thought there is some kind of common training that would be useful to everybody. But that also then there are, once you have that, you know, the divergent needs of each community or state or what, you know, served agency. So I think it's a good plan. I want to participate. And you know, what that comes down to at the end, I know when I came on, there was some discussion about structure. I'm not sure. I think I only caught the last piece of that. So that's my 3 cents.
Oh, that's good. Thanks, Paul. Okay, in case those who don't know, Paul helped organize last weekend's American Red Cross drill thing. And of course, there's mixed feelings and how that turned out and where you are, your experience and everything else. But I wanted him on board here because it was, well, because all he has to offer here. Well, this is what you're all saying is what I think all of us feel, because we all feel, I think we're all in the same boat. How to address this? Well, I would like, Paul went away visually. Bye, Paul. Anyway, no, it's okay. It's okay. It's okay. I'll just give you a hard time or trying to. What I see here is that ARES has had years to go off in different directions. The only thing they've had in common, if you will, is the need for training, disaster training courses and such that we referred here. The same things that OxCom people are asking for, the same thing, a lot of disaster, or because they all want the same thing. They want people on that they can utilize, that they can use. So, trying to get my thoughts here. I should be taking notes. I need a secretary, but my wife won't let that happen. Anyway,
a logger on the side, yeah.
What I'm thinking is that we start out with the osmosis or the cover of, or how do you want to say it, of ARES. It gives us something to work with. But ARES itself, by itself, is not limited to ARL membership. There's no ties except for the leadership part of it, the SEC and the EC, stuff like that. But the actual membership, they do not have to be an ARL member. And that's beautiful. I like that. I like that, because that will allow us to spread our wings, so to speak. I'd like to see a training that would involve this basic, common across the board. And it's to get people involved, people knowing each other, working with each other, break down those barriers. We can include, for example, the American Red Cross. They have a need for the WinLink thing. There's at least one and probably more, several states that use OxCom, and they don't care. They could care less about ARES. That's just paying their side. So, but they have the same needs. So we can get this training down and accomplish several things at one time. We need to break down those barriers. We need to get new people involved, old people. I don't care how long somebody's been a ham. I don't care how many years they did something in their work life. We're trying to do something from this point moving forward. And I don't think the piecemeal means of doing it, as we've done for years and years, is a good way. We all do learn differently. So we've got to find a way to break that pattern and make it so that everybody's comfortable learning together with their own learning limitations, if you will. That's going to be a big challenge right there. Some of the other challenges are not so giant. Zoom is a good platform, but if this works the way I hope it works, we might have to go to a webinar thing. It might be a Zoom webinar or something else, but we might have to do reformat how we do it. Oh, as you guys were talking, I had a jillion thoughts go through my head.
Dan, let me ask you this real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
What do you want the end state to look like?
Yeah, how do you know when we're successful? Yeah.
How we know we're successful. You know, I think we start out in baby steps. I think we start out with something that's common across the board. We do it. I know everybody wants the people come on board with these courses and such, but I think to get the new guys in there, we want them to want to do that. We want them to want to be a part of it. We want them to want to be there, and that's going to be the fun stuff. The reason why I like WinLink is because all these guys that are just starting out, they got a little handheld radio. How do I get involved? We could teach them the basics of WinLink without the radio. We can do it through the email system, and then the other people are doing radio, and we can advance from there to forums, and then the radio, the hardware side, pull them along, type of a thing. So WinLink itself makes for, to me, a nice place to start this out. Where will it end? When we get to it, we're going to learn enough to see where we want to take it. I'd like to see this going to take it so we get some of these other things fulfilled. In other words, more universal training, this kind of stuff, where we're pulling people together, but we got to get people working together before we can do that. We got to break down some fences. The organizations that have a problem with ARES, the ARES that has a problem with the organization. Somebody did something to me or to a group that I favor some time ago. That garbage has got to go on the wayside. And the only way to break those walls down is to get people working together, playing together. So we start them out with something simple. We do some, maybe at some point move into some exercises. There's a lot of direction there. We need to have a format that they can go back to. In other words, like Barry was saying, we're following, yes, we're getting an instructor, but they're following something. They can go back to something either on a website or in a handbook or something that they can follow up on. It's going to take a lot of promotion. That's where, Sid, your insights on PR. We're not calling upon you as a PR, we're calling upon your insights here. If I'm making sense, I'm trying to cover it all. I should have taken notes. I'm sorry, guys. I'm going to share something with you in just a few moments, and why I think it's important we do what we do, but we've got to find a way to do it. I got an email all queued up to send to all of you. And it's an email I got from Ken, K1BIC. He's the learning, lifelong learning manager. And so here, I'll zip this out to you.
Chris?
Yes, Chris. Okay, you shall all be getting that email very shortly.
Got it.
All right.
All right, Dan, can I throw something out there?
Sure.
I just wanted to bring up, you know, whether state is, or if an EMA is OxCom or ARES or what. Here, the state is very happy to have the organization. You know, OxCom is sort of, you know, it's a certain type of training, and then you go in there and they're in charge of what they like about it, in my estimation, is that they're in charge of the team, and they don't have to go through an SEC or an DEC or an EC to command that team. You know, there's less layers between them and their dedicated crew. Here, what they like about the fact that those guys are ARES as well is that ARES organizes a whole bunch of training, whether that be public service events that are happening statewide, you know, outside of that community. Okay, whether it be, you know, a diabetes toward the cure event with, you know, 2,000 cyclists, or if it's we do work with the Boston Marathon, we do, you know, all these little public service events, or even like the Red Cross activity over the weekend, where we can bring these guys in. We had the Hurricane Awareness Tour with the 2 hurricane chasers came down at an airport near here. You know, so we have a lot to offer their OxCom guys, okay, and that offloads a lot of responsibility or obligation to do training for their teams that otherwise they'd have to undertake themselves. So I think that you know, that's an upside to the ARES group being larger in geography than a lot of the little, you know, we don't have county structures here really. We have counties, you know, demarcated geographically, but they have no government structure. So it's either the state or it's the municipality. Okay, and when you get down to working, and every municipality by law here in Rhode Island has to have an EMA. Okay, and a lot of them being very small, you know, they have a part-time EMA director who is desperate for help. You know, he gets $2,000 or $5,000 stipend or something, and usually he's the chief of police or the chief of the fire department or what. Okay, so rarely is it any kind of full-time EMA. They just have a guy because they want the state money that comes with you know, complying with that law. So what we can do for them is we can come in and we can say, we have 10 hams in your community, you know, trained at these different levels. Okay, you know, 3 of those 10 are probably adequate to serve in your EOC. You know, 5 more are adequate for you to deploy outside the EOC. You probably they don't have the skill set to work within the EOC or the credentialing to work within the EOC. Okay, but they'll also be able to help you. And we have the other 2 guys who are working their way up, but they can all be your guys, okay, and be your OxCom team. But they'll get trained by us with the rest of us, okay? In Rhode Island, we only have, you know, I mean, we have I think it's 985 hams. We have about 150 ARES members out of that group. You know, a good chunk of them in this new ARES level training thing are still level 1, you know, maybe 50 of those have made it to level 3, okay, with the, you know, and I agree, by the way, I think, I'm not sure who it was that was saying, you know, they get this training they do their FEMA courses, but they never apply it. Well, here we try very hard to apply that, you know, the NIMS and ICS systems, you know, to even our little cycling, you know, the diabetes event or whatever it is, so that everybody gets a little practice doing ICS 205s, you know, everybody works through their essentially like a COMT, you know, I guess now, you know, I'm kind of dissatisfied with the ARRL ARES task book. So we kind of use a COMT task book and then, you know, a RADOP, you know, those kinds of task books. But, you know, if we could standardize this, and that's our goal here, you know, with the New England division, is to try, because we're a lot of small, geographically small states, but fairly densely populated. If a disaster hits Rhode Island, you know, we won't have anybody who can help.
Exactly.
I'm going to need to bring in guys from Connecticut and Massachusetts that's undoubtedly will need that. If the same thing out on the Cape in Massachusetts, if something hits over there, they can't, those guys there won't be able to help. So they're called, and they have, for example, there were tornadoes in Connecticut a couple of years ago. We sent hams there to help, okay, because they were, you know, beside themselves with what to do about it. So, you know, and you know, we're talking in New England, we have, you know, 4 states that make up the geographic area of Iowa. You know, so how do we handle it? So I just wanted to throw out there that this divergence that we seem to see between OxCom and ARES here is not really a divergence. It's sort of ARES has people that are qualified under OxCom that we can assign in a way to the local groups, and you know.
But Paul, let me ask you this real quick, and everybody in the group. What is it ARES, just in a single sentence, what does ARES better than any other group? What's our competitive advantage?
We network. We talk to each other.
That's what's great.
But yeah. OxCom talks with one another too, right? I mean, just what exactly is it that ARES brings to the table, that it brings to the table better than any of the other groups, well, right? Cross networks. I'm trying to understand what the meat of
not
this.
Not necessarily. So I didn't make it for the OxCom Zoom meeting, but I watched it today. And one thing that he said was, you're not going to get in the door unless we know you. And actually, that is a barrier actually to good functioning. I understand, especially if you come from the public safety side of things, volunteers are an unknown. You don't want to add an unknown, the chaos of an unknown or a volunteer in the midst of an emergency. That's the last thing you want to do. The local sheriff said to me once, he says, you know, he says, if you ask me if you can help, I'm just going to say no. The blanket no, because as much as we love you and as much as we love working with you and as much as, you know, we've worked together now for 10 years, my first instinct is to say no volunteers. No, it's too much of an unknown in the midst of all this, of an emergency. So yeah, if that is the case and you have to know somebody personally, there's no room for growth or bringing in new people or training in new situations. And so what we need to do is walk up to, not the sheriffs, not the PD, the other side of things, emergency management and health department and people like that, and say, this is what we do. We all have the same training. We all have the same leadership. You know, we're all within the same structure. We have different skill sets that we come from, but we're here to do this. This is what we can offer for you. If you walk up to emergency management and you say, what do you need us to do? They're going to go, I don't know. You walk up to the health department and you say, what do you need us to do? They're going to go, I don't know. But if you walk up to the health department and you say, I understand that you have 2 EOCs open and you have poor communications, we can sit at either end for you for the day. They'll take you. You walk into emergency management and you say, we can man these radios. We can pass this traffic. We can check into the SEOC. We can call the next county over and find out how they're doing. They'll go, great, do that, please. Especially if you've worked with them before. I mean, this sounds airy, but it's what you've been practicing anyway. And if you walk in and you say, I've got 10 other hams that are home, that are available, and they're out in the field and I'm talking to them, that's different than OxCom. OxCom doesn't say, yeah, they pre-stage, the North Carolina guy does anyway, and it's a little different everywhere. They pre-stage, they've got set parameters on what they do, they've got certain frequencies that they use, and we don't. We are much more adaptable, much more capable of adapting to a situation, and we have a bigger resource pool of potential trainable volunteers and participants, and that's different. I did my OxCom training. I'm in the CASM database. I've been called out a couple of times, and it's, you know, and it is what it is. Don't get me wrong. I love OxCom, but it's not the same as being able to call over to the next county over and say, how many hams do you have available?
But Lee, let me hold you to this now. You've given us a fantastic overview. What is it we actually do?
We network.
But we actually communicate, isn't that what really sets us apart from any other group? No other group does this kind of communication. And as you just pointed out, at the breadth that we do and with the numbers that we can do. OxCom is always, with the background checks and so on, will always be limited. Same for the Red Cross. Plus you've got different, but really ARES, all it has is communications. Would you agree? That's really what we do.
Right.
As opposed to any of the other groups. And again, we've got sheriff's communications groups and they go through a lot of background checks. So it's a very different culture in our area, at least. But
I hate to pick apart the wording, but sometimes we're not very good at communicating.
Oh, yeah, that's exactly why we're here today, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
So I really appreciate that. Thank you. This is what we're trying to change. And I think that's what I heard from Paul. That's what I heard from Dan. Really, our focus is the communications. One of the things we did early on was we just looked at, hey, what do all the other groups want? Like LA Fire Department CERT. This is where CERT started in the United States. They demand the FEMA courses. So we just added that to the thing. We didn't even think about it. It's like, whenever you guys get to it, that's fine. If you don't get to it, that's fine too. We think it's important before the language, but you're communicators. And as it turns out, most of the hospitals we serve want people to have these courses, but quite frankly, if you don't have them, their problem is communications. They're healthcare professionals. They don't care about the communication. The thing doesn't work anymore. It doesn't work. Make something work.
Hospital people can push a button maybe once or twice.
And that's, yeah, I mean, that, you know, the thing there is, and this is what you just described with all the events you support. That's what Paul described with the events they support. What we bring is the communications, and a very robust communications, and a communications that says, you know what, you have infrastructure, we don't care, we can put this up.
Yep.
I think there's actually another piece. Yeah, the communications is very important, but let's go back to your podunk place that has the fire chief that gets $2,000. If he has somebody there with ARES who can fix his antenna when it breaks, you know, don't forget the hands-on piece. There's definitely some value there. And I think that combination, yeah, the communications is the vast percentage of it, but the ability to quickly diagnose things when they go wrong in the field also warrants conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would like to, let me
repair
out there, Oliver. You know, it's not only, we have to bear in mind, I'm just going to qualify this with, we have to say communicate, okay, as opposed to operate radios.
Mm-hmm.
They're not the same, okay? And the Red Cross has had issues in the past where, you know, in their DST, their Disaster Services Technology Group, where most of the hams end up, where, you know, they want a message sent from here to there. The radio guys, quote unquote, as they call them, are, number one, they're sort of like, you know, the black sheep in the group.
Aren't they?
Because they refuse to do anything but operate the radio. Okay, so if you know, what I keep training my guys to do is to get a message from here to there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's how we spell that out. We don't say operate the radio. Okay, we say get a message from here to there. If that means that the cell phones are working now and you can do it by calling the guy, call the guy. Okay, if it means getting up out of that chair and walking down the hall with a piece of paper and handing it to the guy, then hand it to the guy. Okay, but aside from that, we not only have, I agree with whoever it was, I didn't see their face, who was saying, you know, we can fix an antenna. In my state, we have a lot of low budget EMAs where they don't even really have the ability. Some of them, or most of them, I should say, now are starting to get a radio. You know, some have multiple, you know, depends on the you know, the resources of the community. Okay, but hams also bring their own equipment. Okay, so there's budget there. Okay, and when Lee says networking, okay, you know, there are towns around here where there's a ham, a guy, okay, who's 85 years old, okay, and doesn't leave his house and is not going to leave his house. And he could probably be a very useful net control operator, in some cases, one of the best net control operators here, okay, but they need other guys. Okay, so OxCom is generally restrictive in this respect, whereas I can get guys from 5 neighboring towns to go get trained and credentialed in that town, so that if something comes up, they have the ability to use hams, even then, although there's only one guy there. And because they have low budget and there's just the fire department chief who's the EMA director, these guys bring their mobile radios, they bring their HTs, they bring an HF radio, and they know how, in the context of fixing the antenna, they know how to set up an antenna that will work at the shelter or at the incident site, or search and rescue is big around here. You know, so this is all what ARES can bring. And I think that the problem that we see here, aside from things Dan said earlier, which, you know, whether there's 20 years ago some guy pissed off the EMA director and institutional memory still stands, I am fighting that still. Okay, but you know, we have the ability to bring a lot of resources, and essentially free resources that are already well trained, or we're working on that, right? But that's what we're here today about. Okay, you know, to get resources available that are well trained, that and are really good at this. You know, somebody said hospitals can get there. You know, we see a lot of places think that, you know, by ham radio, when all else fails, ham radio, they think, okay, we're going to get our 911 operators to have ham licenses, and we'll get a couple of the nurses and doctors to get ham licenses, and we're all covered then, because now we can get a ham radio over here, and we have this guy with a technician license. He can use that when the thing goes to the fan. Okay, and the answer is no, he can't. Okay, he hasn't got the love and passion of a hobbyist who goes to field day and sets up an antenna on them, or sets up an antenna on a mountaintop, or, you know, paddles out to an island and sets up a radio there with a, you know, field deployable system, and has been doing that, you know, 3 times a month all summer, every summer for 10 years. So that when it comes time, there's a rainstorm out and you need a guy at a shelter, this guy has set up this antenna in harsh conditions on a mountaintop or on an island someplace, you know, hundreds of times. And he's not going to have a problem putting it outside your shelter.
Well, here's the problem though, Paul. When we walk in, they can't tell by looking at us that this is what we do and that this is what we know. We are an unknown often. And
I agree. And so the reason my team, even though I didn't really like the way the activity this past weekend, you know, worked out.
You know how I feel about it.
Well, yeah, well, we've talked about that, but I think, you know, I think that we participated anyway. And for Rhode Island, you know, getting 21 hams, yeah, you know, to do that, you know, it was, I call it an activity, right? Okay. But, you know, we got them all doing it. Okay. And so, you know, this is something that I can now throw in the portfolio, you know, when I go sit down, which I'm doing this, you know, as soon as, you know, I've had some surgery, whatever. Okay. But I was supposed to today have a meeting with an EMA director in a small town called Foster here. Okay. And we put that off. But next week, I'm going to go there and I'm going to say, I now added another resume item for Rhode Island ARES that says, not only have we done this, you know, this cycling event and that marathon and this event and that thing and the other thing, but now also this thing with the Red Cross. Okay. And, you know, I can go show in a documented way, that we participate in these things, and we have facilitated, communications in sometimes very hard conditions. So, it adds up over time, and we want the portfolios, and there's nothing, I think, that I can show, a state EMA director that says all my guys took these courses that he'll care about. Yeah, he'll want all the courses. Okay, he'll want the FEMA courses, he'll want OxCom, he'll want, whatever. Okay, but everybody takes courses.
I think
Okay.
it's less about they want the courses, is that they understand that we're trained and licensed.
Right.
And if we say that that this is our training standard, they'll accept that pretty much. I mean, 90% of the time. If we say our training standards are rigorous, everybody here has met those training standards, they'll take that normally.
Especially if they include things like WinLink, the real hands-on stuff.
That's right.
Okay, let me interject here at this time. I'm on here. We've been at this in over an hour, and I think we've covered a lot of things. I think we're all on the same platform here. Did everybody get that email that I sent out a few moments ago?
I haven't read it yet, but I got it.
Say again?
I haven't read it, but I got it.
Okay, read it over real quick. It's not very big. This came from Chris. And Fred, did you get it okay?
Yes, I did. Thank you.
Okay.
I read it.
Dan, I'm not sure I did.
Okay, I will make sure you got it. Hang on.
I have the one you sent me earlier today. I mean, when I first got on here. Trying to keep me off your mailing list, Dan?
No.
I'm kidding.
On that, so if standardization is important, that most ARES folks don't consider it a club, aren't joining an organization. They consider themselves amateur radio emergency service. They're available when they're available. They function as they function, and they're not going to take the classes. They're not going to take the courses, right? However, we can expect that from our leadership, that we are already engaged. We are already motivated, and we need to set the example. If we're going to have any kind of credentialing ever, and I'm not necessarily a proponent of credentialing, but it still has to stay on the table as a discussion. If anything, the credentialing needs to come at the leadership level, and we need to set the example. And it needs to be something that if you want the perks, then you're going to put in the time and the effort, instead of browbeating everybody. And I know I've watched Ohio for a couple of years now, how they do it. And I'm going to try some of those things, but we don't pay them, for one thing. And we can't make people do it, but there has to be a benefit. There has to be a perk that goes with having a standard skill set that represents time and effort, and and knowing what's needed, having some experience, and that kind of thing that represents what we want ARES to be. And I think that begins with us. So without a standardization, we'll never have credentialing. Without standardization, we'll never have the tools that we need to teach other hams, new hams, what to do, unless we have a standardized set of things that we do in leadership. So I teach on Sunday nights. We have the Iowa Traffic and Emergency Net, and it falls under the section manager's purview to be the net manager for that. So I took that on last April, and I have 7 net controls for that. It's an ARES net, 7 net controls now. Just got 2 new ones, and all I did was ask. But they requested that we start doing ARES training, because it was basically just a check-in net. And so I asked for a list of things from anybody anywhere that they wanted on that net. And you know what we started with? As a new ham, how do you check in to a net, like a weather net? How do you do that? What should you do? Just the steps of what it takes to check into a net for the first time. And after that night, you know, you never know how many people are listening, right? You know, we had 29 check-ins, but you never know how many people actually listening. I got 40 emails of, could you just send that to me in an email, the step-by-steps? And I thought, boy, there's a real need out there for just the basics. You know, you hear a Skywarn net. As a new ham, can you join that net? So I went through all the basics of, can you join that net, and how do you do it, and what's expected, and what happens if you make a mistake? How do you know if they want your information? That kind of thing. And then we practiced it. We just practiced it. We did a representative net, and we had people give their information, and I swear to God, that was the first one. They wanted more of that. And I said, well, we're going to move on from that, but we'll revisit it again. So it's been a year now, and we're actually going to go through it again. So I think until we start teaching, we're not going to know what's really wanted out there. But I think we need, if we're going to be if we're going to be the impetus behind the teaching anyway, we need to have it standardized for us. We need to have the same understanding about the uses of WinLink, when to use it, how to use it, how do you know is the best way to use it, and that kind of thing. We need to have those skills before we can represent ARES across the board. Am I making any sense?
You're making a lot of sense.
Okay.
Did everybody get this thing I sent out now? Everybody got a copy of that thing that came from Chris?
Yes.
Okay, the reason why I needed for you to read that, because I've been in dialogue with him. I wanted to make sure that we weren't stepping on lifelong learnings and this kind of thing. I've gotten a lot of feedback from directors and other officials in the RL that they like my ideas here when I'm presenting you guys, and they give me green light. But I don't, so I've been communicating with Chris, and the last thing he sent me was this thing I sent you just now. What they are proposing is we can work with them with our training. I don't like that, but this is not my call. This is you guys' call. The reason why I don't like that is what they are doing is a glorified YouTube type training thing. They'll have somebody come on, they'll do a live training. This is what WinLink is, or this is what that is. That will last X amount of time. They're going to record that, and so people go back and look at it again. It's the same thing you go if you went to a ham convention and the guy stepped in front at an hour section like that and gave that kind of thing. That to me is piecemealing. That's what Lee was against. That's what a lot of people are against. It is nothing wrong with it. Piecemealing works. We all learn from it. That we all can hit that YouTube stuff. We hit the books. However we learn from that. So I need to show you what he sent and get your feedback. We could go with that and work with them, and they would probably take a lot of the pain off our hands. On the other hand, I don't think they'll accomplish what we can accomplish, because I think their goals are totally different than ours.
We have to be very careful giving anything over to New England, because if it goes into the black hole, we'll never see it again, and we'll lose control over it. It will be turned into something totally different than what we want to do.
Yes, I think that's my take on this too. He sees parallels. I do not. The only parallel I see is the online training part. And the rest of it is they have a whole different mission they're doing. They are trying to entertain ARL membership. We are trying to be more exclusive to all the hams. Yes, go ahead.
Dan, to Tom. Situation is I'm working with Chris. Quite a while ago, they asked me to write up something, and I wrote it up. I think what you're doing and what they're doing are a little different. Their audience is focusing on the new ham the hams who like to read on the air, and they are interested in course material for emergency communications that is an introductory to what we would want people to have. So they're a feeder group to us. I don't think what they're doing now and what they're planning now, what they've communicated, at least to me, and I was on a conference call with them last Friday, is any more than that, okay? And I think they got their hands full doing that. Here, I heard all these people going, they got to do a old-fashioned needs assessment, or what skills, ability, and competencies do we want for ARES? Start with the basics. You also want to do the leadership, but you got to have the basics first. Got to start with what you need at the beginning, the basics. And you were talking, and everybody was talking, I was taking notes. I drew a series of circles. In the center circle was the core. The next circle was the average operators that we'd send out and deploy for various activities, maybe even work with served agencies, and so on and so forth. The next level would be maybe the people that you would have as liaisons with these served agencies. They might be your assistants, and their skill sets is going to be different than the operators. And then you're going to have the ECs, or the leader skill sets, are going to be different. And then you're going to have your mutual aid skill sets are going to be different. And we have to define those, and then we can write the objectives or the outcomes that somebody was talking about, and then you can figure out how you do the training.
So how would the skill set of a mutual aid or liaison be different than somebody who's working an event?
Without a needs assessment, you do not know that. They may be different when we look at everybody on this call, but without doing a needs assessment, you have no way of knowing. It may take a different attitude. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Some people may not be able to go out of their area and work, or be cooperative.
Oh, no, right. No, I'm not saying everybody should be the same. I'm just saying, why couldn't we expect everybody to have the same skill sets, basic skill sets?
Any training design starts there.
I'd like to look at it a slightly different way, Tom. Maybe levels of training as opposed to, pertaining to a served agency. For example, we have right now these 3 levels, and most of that is simply, whether you took FEMA courses or not. Okay, but here, what we're doing is we're having your basic level. You come in and you take, ISC 100, 200, 700, 800. Okay, and you take EC 001. And then you start going out and doing some of these activities like public service stuff, the marathons and cyclothons and things. Okay, and you get a couple of them all the way up to, and I would say the leadership is, let's still call it a level 3, but there's then a level 4, which I'm calling a strike team, okay, which I can send out to various places, and they'll survive for 48 hours without help, and they'll be able to set up, from scratch and do whatever it is. So I think you're right. I agree with you, okay, that there are different needs, but I think the needs are really in a tier of skill sets that would make certain people useful in different scenarios. And some people will never.
Okay. You're looking at the activities they perform. What I'm saying is, that's fine. I'm saying, what are the common skills that they need all the way going through those activities? Well, that's the commonality. And that is going to be any place in emergency communications. So we're talking the same thing, but I'm saying in the root cause, you've got to identify that skill set, and that the skills, the ability, the competencies, and then, yeah, those are the positions they're going to do. But I'm actually saying, let's step back a little bit more. What is it? And, checking into an is a skill.
Checking into an edge.
I'll turn off my microphone. So.
No doubt we need a skills, an assessment as to what it is that we want to train to. There's no question of that. I agree with that.
we can assume some of that skill set at the very onset of this thing, and we can assume it's pretty well zero and include a lot of the nuance. That will put a bunch of people to sound asleep if we're not careful.
Right.
Well, Paul, you hit on one key piece that I've found here is the best way to gain credibility. And that is to go through the training courses with the EOC folks and go through the 300 and 400 type tabletop drills.
Yep.
There's no better way to gain credibility, because when you show up, it's going to be, oh, yeah, you were in that class. You obviously know what you're doing, or at least you were there and care.
Yeah, you don't really learn anything in those classes more important than who you're working with.
Well, yeah, but to get into the 300 or 400 level class, I think it requires a sponsor of some sort. Somebody has to say, you deserve to be here. Okay, otherwise ARES has to come up with the relationship to get you there. So I agree. I think that was Fred. That the fact that you were there already indicates something. We need to clarify what.
Another huge learning too is when you're there side by side with the people you're going to be in the trenches with, not only do you develop the personal relationships, but you also learn about the structure and challenges in which they operate in. One of the things we found here is this place is so wacky. When we have folks from TEACS or wherever coming down to give ICS classes, we end up spending a third to a half of the class explaining to them how our situation is so much different. And then they tailor their training the best they can to accommodate the need that we have here. But understanding the structure in which those folks work and being side by side with them, there's no substitute for that, because you're doing it in a less stressful environment. If you can have a field exercise, great. But as you said, Lee, a lot of them have to be tabletop exercises, but there's still a lot of benefit to be gained there.
And the problem with being an ARES volunteer is those things happen during the weekday, during working hours. And right. ARES can't often make those courses. Those aren't weekend courses.
Yeah, people have to take it. Yeah, they have to take a vacation day or something.
Yep.
Which also shows seriousness if they do that. So.
No pain, no gain.
Right.
Okay, how do we start all this stuff up to get these people started from the ground zero to go on where they want to participate, to learn more, to do more, be more?
Dan, can I throw out there something? It's not quite to answer your question, but I think part of the problem, and it's been thrown around here as a side issue, is getting people to actually want to do this stuff. And I think, just making the requirements for 100, 200, 700, and 800, some people will just never do it. Okay, and oh well, then you can't do very much in ARES then. Okay, but the part of the history has been we don't require much of people to be a member. But I think that in our training programs, I think part of what training the trainer, we need to incorporate some method of motivating people. And I think it was the North Carolina guys again that had, or maybe I'm wrong on that, but somebody had the idea of in their newsletter they would put in, here's our top earners for the month.
That was Ohio.
Ohio, okay.
Yeah.
So, which things like that, we're going to start doing that. We're not going to do it on a monthly basis or a weekly basis, because I just don't have that kind of density of membership right now. Okay, so that it'll start looking like it's the same 5 guys every week. Okay, but I don't want to do that. But I'll do it quarterly, or something where we put it out there that these guys for the quarter, especially in the spring, summer, fall, where people like to get out and do things, and when those public service events are, but I think part of a standardization package is not just the training, but helping all of us to motivate our people. You know, and part of that should be disseminated out so that we can get some kind of participation in some of this and buy-in from the membership.
And at the bottom, in the long run, I really want my people to be able to work with your people, honestly.
Yeah.
I think that's motivation right there.
Yes, and I think that's what we're getting down to, this cross the board thing, and getting, I envision all kinds of stuff. I wish I was filthy rich, hit the lottery, you know, have an introductory movie thing like you see the ARL did many years ago. Shows these there's a Handson involved. We need to, and would you like to be a part of this? Come on board, da da da. We're going to have the certain times and so forth, and send that out to, and we can do that across the United States to get this thing kicked off with new interests. I don't know. I don't have the skills to do that. Go ahead, somebody. I heard somebody break in there. Okay. Reminds me of the AM days, you know, you could break over the top of each other. Anyway.
We're not full duplex here.
Yes, yes. At any rate, but to get it going, once we get going, I think we get, the one thing we need to do is get these guys working across border lines and cross agent lines. In other words, let's say once we get WinLink going to a certain point, we could have some kind of a exercise to show to a skill set exercise, and it will be Iowa, Ohio, whatever. All these people, these different areas, sitting traffic accordingly to them. Just a simple type of a thing to get. What I'm looking at is ways to break down those barriers.
Dan, we participated in the Black Swan exercise 2 years in a row. That's out of Ohio. And we participated with Indiana, Illinois, Ohio, and then Missouri and Alaska played out of area characters where we could send our welfare traffic to. And the biggest problem that we had was the fact that it was so well done. Honestly, that was our biggest issue, was that it was such a high level, had so many acronyms, had things that people had never attempted to do before. And I mean, it was a great package and we had a great time with it, but that was our biggest complaint, was the language. They didn't like the language. And so we wrote a set last year that really took it down. What we did was this is how we're going to activate. These are the 4 pieces of traffic we're going to pass, and your goal is to get it from one side of the state to the other. We called it Iowa river to river, and get it from one side of the state to the other. You send your message, you should get a reply, and you just get a reply saying, "I received your message number, 219 or whatever." And that was enough right there. That was enough, with no acronyms, no ICS references. We introduced the word StartX, all right? That was what we introduced, StartX and Index, and that was enough. So keep the language simple until the concepts are well ingrained, is my advice.
And that's exactly what I am saying. That's exactly where I'm at here. We start out with baby steps. It's like the people that Lee was referring to. They just want to know how to check into the net or what to say when somebody calls them by the call sign. Keep it simple. The next step up, we introduce something else and so forth. We start building
if you get people complaining that that's boring, then you know you're doing it right.
You got it. The thing is, and we can, I like to see us include as much as possible. I like to see it moved around. I've already been talking to Oliver about their group starting it out. He's got some
I think Rhode Island volunteered too.
Yeah, there's a lot of people. It's the only reason I picked on Oliver is
that's California and Rhode Island. We could go ocean to ocean this time.
There you go. But anyway, regardless of where we're at, to get it done, we start out simple and make it work. And as far as boredom goes, if we're doing it, I don't know, we limit it to a hour training session or whatever to cover a certain thing. I don't know. The instructors, everybody here need to formulate that, how long it will take, because some parts it will take longer than others to explain and walk through. So anyway, that's my thoughts there. Feedback, please.
Remember, if we're dealing with technicians, especially newly licensed technicians, they have no idea what the push-to-talk button is. They've never used a radio before, most of them.
Yes.
Especially the hand radio. So we need to get down to the real basics, like you said. This is a radio. This is an antenna. You have to put the antenna on the radio and hook it up to a battery and hook a microphone up to it before it can be used. A lot of technicians have no idea that that's the step. And that's what we need to start out at.
We don't have to word it quite step by step that close, but we can say, here's the radio and here's the antenna, guys. You guys can put it together and they can fill the blanks in. And you know.
But we also can set expectations and say, if you're gonna volunteer for an event, your equipment has to not only work, but it has to work well enough to serve the event, and start setting those expectations.
Yes, yes. And it'd be nice at some point we talk them into knowing how to program their own radios.
Yeah, and they need to know how to use it.
Yes, yes. Okay, Sid, you're being awful quiet there. I'm going to pick on you. What's your brain going through? What are you seeing? What's your visions?
I like the idea of a needs assessment because we've talked about 30 years worth of work just in this hour and a half, and not that that's a problem, but to get people motivated, they need to see an end line. And if they're new people, maybe I was looking over this Florida standardized training plan. I've got a bunch of opinions, but I'll just, my glass is half full right now. So I will say, if people who are interested in working towards filling their task book can use trainings and it ports back to the specific requirements, that will help people be more motivated. If it's just, oh, hey, we're going to have a new ham, how to use your HT. Yes, we are going to get people and people will learn something, but everybody, including this group and all the other instructors, we need to know what we're working towards. Otherwise, we're going to get bogged down. Unfortunately, we're dealing with the potential of tens of thousands of hams. And as it wasn't so prevalent last year when I did my public information officers, see, I almost said an acronym there. My public information officer calls, I did the calls and I got an email or two. But now for every hour I spend on a call like this, I have an hour or 2 hours of follow-up. Yeah. Which I feel is good, kind of like Lee and your 40 emails from how to check
the weather net.
and there's a group of people that want to help and they see a benefit, but we probably need to do that needs assessment and decide if our slice of this pie is giving people opportunities to get a video Elmering on certain training subjects so that they're a better asset to their ARES group or to their county or to whomever, and they can put that training into their backpack that they carry, and oh yeah, I do know about WinLink, or we've really, on the federal government side before I retired, we really got away from asking served agencies, what do you need?
Right.
As for numbers, because every community wants food, water, and a doctor. Well, what kind of food, what kind of water, and what kind of doctor? So it's what capability needs to be solved. And I like, in one respect, I like that 100, 200, 700, 800 are classes, but I found, because I'm an instructor for those, even if you have the greatest exercise in the world to finish all those classes up, within a week, people don't remember. and they don't know their place, and they don't understand where they fit in. So it's like when Lee said, it's just constantly being involved, getting involved, but
doing it.
And my thoughts are, I worked at a federal government agency that they finally came to me and said, we know you show up for meetings, but we have no clue what you do.
Right.
So what I did is the week before we had a birthday party. So I gave the example of the birthday party, and I used ICS. And I knew there was somebody that went and got the cake, somebody got the ice cream, somebody collected the money, somebody made a decision on the room. And I just went through all these pieces of this lunchtime birthday party that only lasted 60 minutes, and people were surprised. Now, of course, some of them gave me a even more crazy look when I saw them in the hallway, that I could port a birthday party into the incident command system. But it's one of those things that when we know what we want to provide, and then we're specific about it, and there's a beginning and the end, I feel that helps people get motivated to be on calls. And these are all great ideas. I don't know that I've heard anything that I disagree with. I realize that with my day job with the ARL, I'm a member volunteer like all of you, but we're trying to figure out how to get public information officers and public information coordinators motivated. And I'm finding that we have a lot more motivation with section managers. Mm-hmm. And so that's, as I've said on some of my calls, if you look up on the website, ARL website, to see what it takes to be a public information officer, well, that scares me looking at it. There's so many things. There's like 30 bullet points. How do you get somebody that can't even press the button on their HT because they're afraid to make a mistake? And now, do these 30 things so that's what success looks like. So that would be, and like I said, this is some great information, and I love what's been discussed, because now I've got some better ideas how to do my day job. But the idea of when it comes to motivate people, everybody, just like everybody learns differently, everybody's motivated differently. If it was just that we got everybody a hat, well, that would be great. That'd be easy. Maybe we get one size fits all, and but it's not like that. And we are asking people to, and this is for my program and then what we're doing here, we're going to ask people to make a choice to be part of what we decide we're going to do when they have so many other choices. Mm-hmm. And I'm not even going to address the people who know everything and the people who have done everything. Everybody should be a lifelong learner, and it's not just an amateur radio. And so the idea of how do we get their attention, as Dan and I have talked, I do, right now I'm heavily involved, although it's on hold right now with COVID, but there's a program in California called Listos California, where the company I work for has got an over $1 million contract to do the community emergency response team training for tribes and underserved areas. And also we've got a contract with a couple of the underserved counties where we're going to bring the community emergency response team training and also the Listos training, which is more of a family and personal preparedness program. And every time I teach that class, or I teach the communications module, right before I started, I said, who's a ham radio operator? And there are a ton of hands that go up that, yeah, I'm a ham radio operator. And then there's always a sidebar at the break or after the day is over to say, hey, I'm interested in becoming a ham radio operator. Mm-hmm. And so those are the people who are energized to do something for their community. And if they knew where the starting line was and the finish line, they're going to make those choices on what the priority is. And of course, we're all helpful people here, not just the people on this call, but in general. So the ability to facilitate making it easy to be successful, I think might be the way to wrap that up.
Well said. I totally agree with that. Yeah.
Tom, are you there, Tom? There you are. Your lips are moving.
He's muted.
Yeah, I didn't mute him. He muted himself.
The whole idea is the better off that way when you can't hear what I'm saying. Yes, what were you asking me, Dan?
No, I'm just thinking now the crew here and what we're trying to accomplish. Would you like to write up something? What I'm thinking is I need to set up a small, like we did for the docs. And, Tom was involved with some documentations for ARES Connect. And I set up a small group so they can work it out separately from the rest of the world. So I'm thinking with this group here, I would set up a deal for that. And Tom can write up what he's heard here and get something started from the educational standpoint. We can all start adding, subtracting to that and moving forward that way. Give us a starting point. Does that sound okay to you, Tom?
No problem. We need a little timeline to when you need it for. We can do some whittling.
Okay. How about an hour from now?
I think more of what's being said here is if we figure out a way to bring it all together, we'll be able to. That's the whole thing. I think the people are saying the same thing. They're saying it differently because there's differences between the 71 different sections of this organization.
Yes.
But at the same time, there's a core. There's a core. So, okay, you and I can talk about the timeline offline, and I got some ideas, and maybe we could even do a survey of the people and get their input, and then from there go whatever you want to do.
Yeah, I'm just wanting something basic, just a rough draft to get it started. Is what it amounts to. Nothing fancy. Did you want something there, Paul?
No, I was.
Oh, okay,
I was looking
okay.
at the chat.
No, you're fine. I just want to make sure I'm not interrupting somebody. What I'm trying to do is not have us all night talking, beating the bush to death, everything we're all agreeing to, but move us on to the next step and how we're going to accomplish it. And I'm agreeing with what Sid said. He's got some good points. We need to know where the starting point is. We need to know the starting point and the end point. And we can lay down the foundation in between. It's sort of like writing a book. How did it start? How did it end? And the good and bad guys get all the adventures in between. We're the good and bad guys, I guess. I'll set this up in a moment, and I'll send you all, get you all an email with that and get that part going. How do you feel about this, Scott? You're being quiet. You're hiding behind your picture.
Oh, I was busy working on. I'm listening to everybody, and I agree that we've all pretty much said the same thing over and over and over, maybe just in different ways. We all have our little nuances within each section of how we take care of things and how we do things. So, but I think we're all in agreement that there's got to be a starting point. Now, where that starting point is maybe a little bit touchy as far as my section versus your section, that type of thing. Where are we at versus where is somebody else at? But I think we've already been given the ground rules pretty much as to where to start with this, and that pretty much comes in with the NIMS training of the 100, 200, 700, 800 to begin, and what all that means and how it relates, and so on. I think that that's a pretty good beginning about where to begin on, if we're talking in relationship to ARES groups and that kind of thing, as to where they need to really begin. And Lee, I do agree with you. In fact, in 2013, we started a program that all of our ECs, DECs, the SEC, and myself, we all had to have the training. And in fact, the SEC and myself, we have 300, 400, along with about 170 people here in Ohio that have the 300, 400, or the other series, the 7 professional series online courses. So those are things that over the years we have convinced people into using, but it's a hard sell.
Well,
Why do I need it? What am I going to do with it once I get it? Is
Right.
it really worth it? All of those things.
Well, I know
Well,
in the Red Cross we did HOTS, hands-on trainings, and I know those were, for me, those were a reward to be able to use the skills that I had on in a weekend kind of training, mentoring kind of environment, and it was a lot of fun.
yeah.
Got
Oh,
to set up the
absolutely.
satellites, and you got to, I mean, it's all hands-on, and I really found that to be rewarding, and that's what drove me to get the precursors done for that. I'd like to see ARES do some regional.
Well, it's like 2 years ago when Stop the Bleed started. We encouraged all of our group here to take the course. It's 2 hours. It's quick. It's easy. It's something that even though you may or may not use it in the field, it's something you may need at home.
Yeah.
There's an absolute, positive. Somebody could use it at home. It isn't necessarily something that has to be ARES related.
Right. I like that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
I might interject something here. We need to get that's point B. Point A is getting them to want to take those kind
Well,
of courses.
Well, this
and
goes
that's
to
the truth.
motivation, though.
But
Yeah.
the real truth is, Dan, and I'll give you the experience we've had in the past 7 years with that, is those who want to will, those who don't won't. It's just
Okay.
that simple.
Those that be taking training that we're offering, thinking about offering, is there because they want to be involved at
Right.
some level.
And that's exactly right.
But
And
that
that's
only
what I'm-
goes so far. If you're not active in your local emergency management, if you don't have a county with more than one ham in it, like several in Iowa are that way, if you don't have an activity that you can use your skills in, the motivation starts to disappear. You can only take so many classes without actually using those skills.
And that's where we get on the nationwide spec, so that
Well,
Iowa is talking to somebody and
we
Rhode
have
Island.
we have the directive already. You take the 4 basic, then you move on and advance on up into the professional series. So that directive is already there. It's already set. Okay, if you wish, it's cast in stone because it is a part of the ARES plan. So and that's fine. That's what we've needed for many years. So here in Ohio, we've taken it a step further. We aren't so much communicators as we are volunteers. Here in Ohio, you can be drafted to do damage assessment, move pallets of water from one area to another. It just depends on what's needed. Somebody in this group said, it's all about needs assessment. Absolutely. We are a part of EMA here in Ohio. We are actually members of the Emergency Management Association of Ohio, which is all of the 88 counties here.
Yeah, and in Iowa, we're written into the statewide emergency communications plan.
Actually, we're not only written into it, I am a member of the education committee for EMA here in Ohio. And with that, we do a lot of the training for the EMA directors all over Ohio here. So it comes down to whether or not, what kind of programs do you want to offer to these folks and that kind of thing. So like I said, it all starts with the 100, 200, 700, 800.
I disagree.
You got to get them there first.
No, we got to get them there. I agree on.
Yeah.
We got to get them there. They're not there. We're talking about the guy that got the handheld, wants to know what to say on a net. You're talking about the guy that knows what to say on the net. We got to teach him how to run a net.
Well, obviously you've got, this is where, this is where incentive licensing has kind of changed the course. When I came along in the very middle 70s to early 70s in amateur radio, the clubs taught you all of this stuff as you were training to get your license.
Right.
Today, they read a book, they memorize 35 questions, and all of a sudden they're communications experts. No, they're not. They're nowhere close. And that's the sad part of it.
And that's what we're dealing with, and that's what I'm
Right,
saying.
and you're and I agree with Barry. You're going to have to teach them. This is an antenna. This is a microphone. This is how it connects. And the reason why I say it that way is because look at what we've already done. And Tom, you're a part of this. Look at what we've already done with ARES Connect and given them a step-by-step direction. And yet a lot of folks say it's still too difficult.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Yeah.
let me really interject, because I think it's important right now to point out we're in our area one of the youngest groups in terms of the average age of membership. And young in amateur radio means, the average is somewhere between 45 and 55. But we're also attracting a lot of young parents, people with families and so on who are working full time. Sometimes both of them are working full time. And one of the reasons why we've been successful is we're very, very mindful of their time. When they come to one of our meetings, it's 2 hours and that's what they have to spend. And we make really sure that they actually spend quality time, that we're not wasting their time, because they've got other options. They've got options to spend their time with their family, which we definitely encourage, but they also do this in order to protect their families. That's why they're getting into communications in the first place. That's why they bought that Baofeng. That's why they watched all those YouTube videos. That's why they're showing up. So as far as we're concerned, and this has been really successful for us, and I'm German, I'm telling you this right up front, it's just, for me, it's goal, plan, work, repeat. Goal, plan, work, repeat.
Right.
And so the thing there is, I haven't come in and I say, today's goal for me is to explain to you how a repeater works and have everybody here hop onto one or two of the local repeaters that aren't pre-programmed in your radios. And then we make that an exercise and we walk them through and everybody keys that repeater. One exercise I found out that what I had on the slide was a different repeater than what was on the handout. The funny part was they all keyed the repeater, just different repeaters. So I thought that was funny. But the point here is that's it. Then the next time they come in, I said, today we'll show you how to do WinLink packet. And at the end of this, we want you to actually send a WinLink packet message, whether it's to a local gateway or peer-to-peer, I don't care, but this is how you're going to walk out.
That's how I'm doing the Sunday night nets. I promise, I tell them what it's going to be about and a week before, and I put something up on the website that they can look at. We spend no more than 10 minutes on it. Then we have a hands-on activity and then we're done.
Yeah. And that's how it takes. And you repeat that often enough. And then we do these field exercises now, and I'm perfectly honest about this. We totally stole that from Washington ARES. The 5th Saturday deployment exercises have been gold. And we have 2 types of them. One of them is a training exercise, a scenario exercise, and the other one, the other type of exercise is an experimental one. For the scenario exercise, we want everybody to set up like they would at, in our case, a hospital or whatever. And then it's the same traffic. You check in on voice. If the repeater isn't active, then you go up to, and we've turned off repeaters. Then you do it on simplex, on the assigned simplex frequency. Then you get on WinLink and you send your check-in and your first hospital status assessment. If you get that far, the only other thing we ask is that you check out. Then after that, you can play around with ICS forms if you want to resource request, whatever it is, working with other people. That's the scenario. It's very specific. We do that in usually 2 to 3 hours just to get them under that pressure. They need to feel the pressure to get this through.
But they also need the success. So
exactly, and that's the beauty of it.
In the end,
you're talking exactly the format that I'm referring to, I'm looking at. That's exactly the level to get people going. If they can't do that, they don't have an interest in amateur radio and won't succeed at what we're trying to offer.
And the craziest things happen on these. We had this one, and she's wonderful, and she sets up this great station and whatnot and gets ready to transmit, and the guy sitting next to her said, whoa, hold on. She goes, what? He says, how is your antenna connected to your radio right now? Is that via RF? And she was so embarrassed at this because she realized the coax cable was still under her bed because it wasn't part of her Go kit.
That happens, doesn't it?
And that happens to all of us. It happened to me. Hey, I've tried to transmit. I've had a check-in net where 8 stations checked in, one after another, and they all failed. And they got really embarrassed and checked their systems. My signaling wasn't turned on.
Yep.
I then had them check in, and then I told them after they were successful that my signaling wasn't turned on. But the thing is, it's okay. We're doing this as exercises, but when it counts, they need to figure out, don't freeze.
Yes. Okay.
Things go
Right.
wrong. Just
I think you're
work it.
seeing where we're going with this. I think you see where we're going with this. First, we show them what the door handle is and how they open the door, and and we can walk through those early steps fairly quickly. We don't have to bore them forever.
But you got to allow for mistakes too, like
Yeah.
Oliver
It's
was
imp-
pointing out.
And we
You have
need,
to force
Mistakes
mistakes.
are great.
Yeah,
People
you
learn
have to
from
force
mistakes.
them. If
we
everything
do-
goes well, it's not a good exercise.
Right.
exactly.
Mhm.
Exactly.
But that means you need the right instructors, because a lot of instructors will say, you know, this is the way you do it. This is the way it has to be. And if you don't do it this way, you're wrong. And that really shuts people down.
Learning by principle, not by recipe.
Mm-hmm.
That's how you make it. That's how you bake a good cake. That's how you make a great meal. If you understand the principle, not if you're going, well, I need this, and then it's never quite the same. You know, the humidity is different. The flour doesn't come out right. That's not the thing. It's like, learn by principle. What principle are you applying there? And once you get people thinking like this, you get it's a lot more fun for them, and it's a lot more fun for you.
That's
It's empowering.
yes.
Yes.
Experience trumps theory.
Yes.
Anytime.
And then they're more likely to reach out and participate when you really do need them. So.
Yeah.
Okay, I think this is what's going to happen here, folks, because we're all on the same page. We're all beating the same drum. Tom's going to put something out. He's just going to rip something together that we're going to beat up and add all over the place too. And he's going to send out a quick documentation that's just off the top of his head, and the rest of it is going to make that thing come to life. Does that sound like a plan?
If you want to do it collaboratively, we use a lot of Google Docs and so on, because people can comment on it. And ARES LAX is also recognized by Google as a nonprofit. So we do have access to Google Classrooms right now too, if you ever wanted to experiment with that. Okay. And a couple of other tools.
We could go into those things. There's a lot of areas that I need to know about and learn about, and all of us are like that, the exposure. Okay, I'm going to set up the groups thing to begin with, just to get this thing going. How often do you want to meet? Do you want to meet next Monday? You want to meet in a couple of days? Should we discuss when we're going to meet? 2 days doesn't sound good to me, but
No.
we're going to be zooming ourselves to death here. We want to be meaningful, but we don't want to, you know, meaningless meetings are not good. So what are you thinking here? Once a week? Silence. Silence
Once
is
every
good. Go ahead, Barry.
Once every 2 weeks.
Once every other week, I think, gives us some time to also work out some things.
Every other week? Okay, let's do it every other week. If we need to do it beforehand, we can get that, we can address that on the tech side of things. Think out of the box, folks. You know, what we're trying to do here is not the cookie cutting type of thing that we're all familiar with. We got some opportunities, and we've got some people that's got experience in different areas. Call upon that mindset. You see something that looks like, you know, something sets off. Hey, why don't we look at this or do that? Let's look that over and do something with it. And we could go ahead, somebody.
That's Tom. What Oliver said is interesting. He brought out one of the things that I've done, whether ARRL or not, might not appreciate it, but we've been running the 100 EC 001, and we just finished like 30 minutes before I came in here. It was 13 minutes exactly. EC 016. They say, oh, you need these ICS courses are prerequisites. Well, that turns people off to taking the course. So what we did in the section when we ran the classroom course and when we ran the Zoom course, well, you don't have to take it as prerequisite, but we'll suggest where the linkage is while we're going through the course, and then you can go back and look at them. Well, what we're doing is we're motivating them to take the ICS courses with the content that relates to what they do, and then they go back and take them. So, and we, right in the outline, we state where it is and what the relationship is. So, and we use our own outline, so. But I think I can come up with a model that I'll share with you, Dan. I scribbled out some things and I'll try to share with you in the next couple days, okay?
Okay, sounds good. I'll set this other thing up. We get going there. We move it all to any other platform we want, but I just want to get things started. Ladies, gentlemen, I really appreciate all you've done tonight. You've all been involved and jumped in there and participated. I love it. I love it. We keep this up, we'll get something going. So is anybody else who I can carry on, but we've now gone forever. So this week goes forever more. Scott's used to stick around to midnight his time.
Yeah, we've done that before.
Yes, you have.
Virtual
It's
tavern.
11 here and I'm tired.
Me
Okay,
too.
The one person,
Today's been a long day.
the one person that wasn't here, and Oscar has called me on the phone a couple of times, supposed to be calling back. I don't know why he didn't make it. I'll give him a call and bring him up to speed. You know, I think most of you know Oscar. All right. Unless anybody's got anything more, we can shut this down and carry on in other formats and go from there.
Okay. Thank you, Dan.
Thank you, Dan.
Thanks, Dan.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. I appreciate you. You don't know
7-3.
how much. Okay, bye-bye. 73s.
Bye, y'all.